All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're getting ready to kick off our webinar, our February webinar with the amazing Andrea Hill. Andrea owns Hill Management Group. She provides strategic consulting, professional development, business development, branding, marketing services to small and mid-sized businesses. She has over 30 years of professional experience as the CEO of this startup, and she specializes in SEO. So we are super excited to pick her brain and to hear all the wonderful things she has to share for us. If you have questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A box or in the chat box, and we will do our very best to address those during this session. And at this time, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Andrea.
Hi, thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks for letting me come present this information to you guys. We have a lot to cover, and I have a slide deck, so I think I'm going to go ahead and launch the slide deck, and we'll just get going. Perhaps you guys can just let me know when you can see the deck. Is it up?
Yes.
Okay, great. So there's no way I could teach you guys all about SEO in an hour or even in a day. So for SEO 101, what I really like to do is give you a framework for what's involved in SEO. And once you understand that framework, then it's a lot easier for you to think about what you might need in your business, but also to have a conversation with somebody who could be doing SEO services for you, or to have a conversation with your web developer or your whoever's writing content for you. So this framework is going to give you information that will allow you to drill in deeper to the areas that you want to understand more, but also be able to step back and understand SEO just as an overall discipline, because that's what it is. So let's jump in. What is SEO? Well, SEO, or search engine optimization, is the set of practices that are used to improve the appearance and positioning of web pages in organic search results. SEO involves both technical and editorial disciplines. It's a lot about words, and it's evolved almost constantly since it was first introduced. Now, there's some argument about when SEO started. So some people say 1991, some people say 1993, could be anywhere in there. But throughout the 1990s and then into the first decade of the 2000s, SEO was like the wild, wild west. Everybody was doing everything they could to get their pages to show up first in search results. We still see some of that wild west behavior. It's not advisable because it actually hurts you. But for the most part, search engines have become tame and organized and structured. And they're all about getting your website seen. So why should you care about SEO? Well, search engines in general, though I'll show you how we really just mean search engine in just a moment, but search engines are answer machines. They scour the internet and its endless content, and then rapidly sift through thousands of factors. So billions of pieces of data and thousands of factors within a fraction of a second to decide which content is most likely to answer a question. Today, most search engines use very sophisticated artificial intelligence, or AI, to deliver results. People talk about, when artificial intelligence gets here. Well, artificial intelligence is most definitely here, and it's alive and well in search engines. But even though the search engines are using AI to figure out what to show, there are a lot of things you can and should do to help those search engines along and make sure that searchers end up on your website. Now, while there are lots of ways to bring traffic to your website, there's paid advertising, there's social media, there's banner ads, pay-per-click, Google AdWords, all of that. The majority of online traffic is driven by search engines and organic results, which is results that were not paid for. So the searches that don't have that little word ad in front of them. Organic results appear more credible to searchers. They trust them more because they know it wasn't paid for. And so they receive way more clicks than paid ads do. The latest research, which was wrapped up by big search engine companies like Moz and Authoritas at the end of 2021, so just in the last couple of months, demonstrated that about 2.8% of people click on the paid ad results, which means that over 97% of people actually filter past the paid results and look for the organic search results for most of their searches. So you should care about SEO because it's the most reliable and also the most cost-effective way to bring people to your website. SEO has about 20 times more traffic opportunity than pay-per-click or any other paid ad strategy. And that's true on both mobile and desktop. SEO is also one of the only online marketing channels that when you set it up, it pays dividends over time. So if you run an ad, that ad runs until you're done paying for it and it goes away, right? If you do a social media post, 2% of your audience will see any given post and it goes away. But with SEO, once you set up your content and you build your website correctly and you feed new content into it, that lives on and on and on in search results. And so you get exponential value from SEO over time. So these are some reasons why SEO should be important to your strategy. And clearly you know that because you're hanging out for a talk on the topic. Before we get into explaining SEO itself, SEO is sometimes confused with SERP and SEM. So we're going to define those very quickly so you know the differences. So SEO in general is free. It's relying on organic search behaviors of internet users to attract people to your website. SEO works slowly. This is not a fast marketing activity, and its effectiveness builds over time. SERP stands for Search Engine Results Page. So this is the page that you see after you enter a search query on Google or on Yahoo or any other search engine. So each search engine's SERP page is designed a little differently. And each platform uses different algorithms or formulas to decide what to show the searcher. So it's important to understand, how they lay out differently. If you use Bing all the time as a search engine, and that's what you're comfortable searching on, and then you go to make sure that your results show up on Google, you need to understand that Google works differently than Bing. It looks different. The results come up differently. There's different things you can do on those search engines. But that's what SERP is. It's a search engine result page. And you have an example of a SERP on the left side of that screen. So what's SEM? Well, SEM stands for search engine marketing. That's the use of paid advertising to bring people to your website. Google AdWords is the most well-known of all the SEM or all the search platforms, but there are other, you can buy ads on Bing, you can buy ads on Yahoo or any of the other search engines. Now, SEM can produce results very quickly, but those results only last as long as your advertising budget lasts. And then it just stops completely. So that's an example. If you look at the picture on the right side of your screen, I've got a bracket around it. There's an ad from care.com. So the search was how to find a nanny. And then from care.com, there's an article, find your perfect nanny. And then there are those 4 little blocks underneath it, find a job, post a job, apply for a job. That's all part of that first paid search. And then there's 2 more that say ad underneath it. So those are all examples of SEM. But today we're focusing on SEO, which is the free version of search. Now, when we talk about SEO, SEM, SERP, we're talking about Google. Why? Because Google makes up 91.9% of search. You could spend time worrying about the algorithms and layouts and conventions of the other ones, but honestly, why do that when you can get 91.9% of searchers just by focusing on one player? And sometimes people will tell me, oh, but I hate Google. I only like Bing, or I hate Google. I only use Yahoo, or Google's too big already. That's fine. When you're doing your own personal searching, by all means, use the search engine that works best for you. But if you're going to spend good time and money on your business, making sure that you're most effective out there on search engines, you really need to care about Google. And 91.9% of your energy needs to go to Google because that's where all the search traffic is happening. So if I say Google a lot in this presentation, it's because we pay a lot of attention to Google here. What does Google want? This is really important because Google's controlling 91.9% of search, which means you have to care what Google wants. Did my screen share just stop or is it still up?
It's still up.
Is it? Okay, it disappeared from my screen, so I wanted to make sure it didn't disappear from yours. Okay, so here's what Google wants. Google wants to be every internet user's favorite search engine. This is all they want. And clearly they're doing a good job of it at 91.9% of search. How do they do that? Like, how do they go about being everyone's favorite search engine? Well, they do that by creating the best possible experience for internet users. So when you think about SEO, you have to think about it from the user's perspective, from the searcher's perspective, because that's how Google's thinking about it. And everything Google does with their search engine is designed to deliver that searcher the best possible experience. This is just how critical user experience is to Google. So in that grayed out section on the screen, that's a SERP result. It's a search page. And there were this list of questions that you could expand and see the answers to. And then at the bottom of that, there's a little button called feedback. And the searcher can click that button and this white box opens up. And Google is asking you, the searcher, what do you think? Was it useful? Was it relevant? How did this search result work for you? Google cares so much about that they ask that on all their SERP pages. So if Google cares about it being helpful, then you need to care about your links being helpful and relevant and useful. So here's what we're talking about today. When I say I'm going to share with you the framework for SEO, I'm sharing with you something I call the SEO stack. Now, everybody refers to SEO in some sort of a pyramid. We all use roughly the same terms for it. So this isn't like a special way of looking at it. It's a fairly standard way of looking at it. And in the SEO stack, there is a hierarchy. And like a pyramid, the base level is what holds up the rest of the pyramid. So the most important things are at the bottom and the least important things are at the top. Now they're all important. There's numbers 8 through 272 that didn't show up here. So numbers 1 through 7 matter, but 1 matters more than 7. So at the bottom of the stack is, can search engines crawl and index your content? And then above that, is your content interesting and relevant? And then above that, have you optimized your content for keywords? And that's a plural. There's no such thing as a keyword anymore. There's too much information out on the internet for any one word to mean enough to anybody. Number 4, does your website offer a great user experience? 5, is your content share worthy? 6, have you optimized your title, your URL, and your description? And 7, are you using data structure and schema markups? Don't worry about that phrase, schema markup or data structure. By the time we get to that point in the graphic, you're going to understand what we're talking about. Now, if you look at the arrow on the right, these levels on the bottom, 1 through 3 or 1 through 4, you cannot rank in SEO without really performing well on those 4 levels of the pyramid. And then levels 4 through 7 or 5 through 7, these are the things that help you stand out. So 1 through 4 are your have-to-dos. And from above 4, these are the things that if you've done everything right, you still might not be getting search results because a lot of other people could be doing things right too. So these are the things you need to do to stand out. So let's talk about being indexable for a moment. I apologize. For some reason, I decided to get a stuffy nose and dry throat right before it was time to come do this webinar. So I sound a little nasal. Okay, so what is being indexable? Search engines work through 3 primary functions. They do crawling, they do indexing, and they do ranking. That's what search engines are all about. Crawling is scouring the internet for content, like I just said a moment ago, and looking at the code and the content for every bit of data that they find. Indexing is when they store all that data that they find during the crawling process. And once a page is in a search engine's index, then it can be displayed as an answer to somebody's question. And then ranking is where they provide the pieces of content on the search engine in the order they think is most likely to satisfy who? Not you, the business owner, the searcher. So the ranking is all about giving the searcher or the question asker the most relevant data first. I don't think I need to dig through too much of that, other than to tell you that Google has Google bots, and they're out there searching all the time. And they have an index called Caffeine, and it's one of the biggest databases. It might be the biggest database in the world. So everything that Google goes out and crawls and learns about, they pack it into this database Caffeine, where all of their artificial intelligence routines start sifting through the data constantly. If you hear people talking about Google's algorithm, a lot of people love to talk about Google's algorithm. That's all they're talking about, is the logic that Google goes through to decide what the ranking should be of the data that it's crawled and indexed. Google doesn't share their algorithm with anyone. They never have. And it's entirely possible, given how much AI they use to do the ranking, that even the engineers at Google don't know all of the parameters that go into a ranking decision, because the artificial intelligence is what's making these decisions. But basically, we do know some things. So we don't know the actual algorithm or the mathematical, calculation that's used to show what to rank. But we know that Google wants your data to be organized, really well organized. Good navigation, clear sub-navigation. They want everything to be logical. So somebody can look at your website and go click, 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 and it will make sense to 98% of the people who would go there. Sometimes I see people doing really fancy things, sometimes highly creative things with their website. And it's kind of like haute couture. It's fun to look at, but most people can't or wouldn't wear it. So it's great on a runway. It's very expensive. You have to be 6'3" and weigh 12 pounds, but it's fun. On the other hand, when you go buy clothes, you're not going to go buy haute couture. You're going to go to the department store and buy things that you know are going to fit and last, and you can wear anywhere. That's kind of what happens with fancy websites, is they look fun, but Google doesn't like them because they're not well organized. And the reason Google doesn't like them, because they're not well organized, is because people don't know how to use them, because they're not obvious and logical and familiar. So doing familiar things with your website is really important. You want to keep updating your website, but you don't want to go crazy and lose your traffic because people don't know how to handle your strange navigation that you've buried in the bottom right corner, or whatever funky thing somebody's convinced you to do. So Google wants it to be organized, simple, and clear. They want to know that whatever search terms it's finding as it crawls your site are going to deliver relevant pieces of information. I'll talk more about that in a moment. They also care about something called recency and frequency. Google will use the recency of your most recent post to be a signal for how attentive you are to your website. If it has a choice between two results that both answer a question, and one of the websites has posted content as recently as last week, and the other website hasn't posted anything new for a year, they're not going to offer the result for the company that hasn't posted for a year, because Google's search engine isn't sure if that website's still even being maintained. So recency is very important in the search results. It's why we encourage people to blog. It's not to torture you like your 7th grade English teacher. And we know most people don't want to write. It's just that blogging is the most reliable way to get recent content on your website, because the other thing, not just recency, but frequency matters. So now if you have a website that posted a week ago, but there wasn't anything else for 6 months before that, so their frequency is every 6 months. And then we have a website that hasn't posted for 2 months, but their history shows they post every single month. Then Google might preference the one with a little less recency, but more predictable frequency than the site that just posted yesterday, but hadn't posted forever before that. So now, if you can demonstrate you are both recent and frequent, that's really important to Google, and you're going to get raised up in the search results as a result of that. So being indexable is about the search engines being able to crawl all over your site, index the content that they find, and rank you according to some algorithm that their artificial intelligence determines. And the most important thing you can do is try to keep your information organized, simple, easy to navigate, recent, and frequent. And that's what being indexable is all about. Now, a lot of times people think of indexable as a series of card files. Like I open up a card file, like this is a very old-fashioned card file from a library, right? But it goes deep, and it's really helpful if you can picture just how deep it goes. So when we talk about the next levels, you've got this mental image. So imagine you go to the library and you open up that card file and you pull a card for one book. That's a search, right? You go get the book off the shelf. That's not all that the indexing is doing. That's a start. You've got this catalog of all the books in your library. But the next step is you can look at the index for the book and you can see all the terms that are referenced inside that book. So now we've gone into the book. We started with the card file, got the book, went into the book. Then the next step is you can actually go to the back of the book and look at the bibliography, and you can see what books that author referenced to write your book. Now you're starting to understand the depth of indexing, that it's digging into the card and then into the book and then into the library of books that supported the book. And that's what these search engines are doing in a split second over billions of pieces of data. So being indexable is being well organized. Your website technology has to be up to date. If you have a website that you developed 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and it hasn't been significantly updated since then, there's a really good chance that the technology you used 7 years ago to develop your site is not up to date enough for Google to be able to do all that indexing on it. It may not actually have enough of the data elements for Google to work with. There's a couple of other things to being indexable that I didn't mention a moment ago. For instance, when you put a photo in your website, search engines don't search pictures. They only search words. Yes, there's a cool thing called Google Map or Match. You can load an image in there and it'll look for an image that looks like it. But that's a fun, playful feature. That's not what search engines do. Search engines look at words. So you have to put an alt text in there to demonstrate what the picture actually is so that the search engine can search it. So, and you can't put, like, if the picture that's on the screen right now, you can't say picture of a wooden card file in a library. You probably should say picture of an old-fashioned wooden card file with 2 drawers open in a library. Like, you're trying to be super specific about your pictures in your alt text. There's 2 reasons for this. One, Google needs to search your pictures. If you want your pictures to show up in images.google.com, which is where a lot of people go looking for images, then you have to have alt text there. But there's also something else very important in search today, which is that Google is giving great attention to which websites are accessible. And to be accessible to the blind, your website needs to give words to things that they can't see, that they're going to have their engine reader read to them. And they're going to hear about your picture audibly. So if you want to do the right thing by a blind person that's searching your website, you're going to explain your pictures in great detail so they can have the pleasure of enjoying your website and learning from your website as well. So you need alt text for photographs in order for them to show up in search at all. And Google has already said that starting this year, they're going to give greater and greater weight to website accessibility. And one of the big aspects of that is making sure that there are words for everything on your site. It also means your website has to be designed to be accessible. That's not something we can get into today. If you have the most recent version of WordPress, if you're on one of the builders like Shopify, Wix, Weebly, Square, or using something like Joomla, then your website is accessible. If you built your website yourself using a GoDaddy web page builder 6 or 7 years ago, there's a really good chance your website won't pass the accessibility test. Again, because you don't have the technology in those types of tools to give the accessibility readers and translators what they need to be accessible for the differently abled. So make sure your website's accessible. We'll talk about other things like, well, if you run videos on your site, it's really good to have a transcript of the video. Again, they can't index a video. It's all pictures and sounds, and but you can do a transcript, and you can use tools. There's a tool, if you have a lot of videos, doing a transcript can be a real pain in the neck. Now, you could upload it to your YouTube channel and then ask it to automatically create a transcript, and it will, and it'll be pretty good, actually. Not great, but pretty good. or you can get a tool called Happy Scribe. And Happy Scribe is a subscription software. You can upload your videos to it and it will create transcriptions for you. We'll talk about internal and inbound links later, but remember this, that when the search engines are indexing your site, they're not just looking at all the articles and pages and pictures you put there. They're looking very closely at the links in your site, because they come to your page, just like you went to the card file. Then they hit a link, that's the book. Then they dig into the link and see where the link goes. And they follow that link from page to page and place to place. So if they hit a link to your website from somebody else's website, they follow from their website to your website. If they hit a link on your about page and it goes to something that's a specialty for you, they're going to go from the about page to the specialty page. So that crawler is looking for all these links and using them to find out, does this website get more and more interesting and relevant as I follow these links? Or does it just get kind of confusing and I don't know what the point is? The search engine wants to know that, so it's looking at your links for those things. You need things called sitemaps to submit to the search engines to say, hey, search engine, crawl my website. Again, most website builders like a Wix, Square, Weebly, Shopify, they generate sitemaps for you. But if you have a custom website, you do need to be creating something called a sitemap. And you want your website to have content on it that encourages people to share it on social. Encouraging them to share links from your website to their Facebook page, from your website to their Pinterest board, from your website to their Twitter posts. That's all very helpful as well, because the search engines care about all the other places links to your content show up. So that's just sort of a laundry list of what it means to be indexable. We want the search engines to crawl your site, to save all that data in their big index engine, and then to rank your site based on all the quality that they find there. So now we're going to go to the second level of the pyramid, which is relevance. Now, most people, depends on how old you are, but most people, when they look at that picture of Marilyn Monroe, can kind of hear her singing "Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend." It's just such an iconic image, right? So when the internet first started really getting going in the late 90s, early 2000s, and jewelry retail stores were making their first websites, they kept stuffing the keyword Marilyn Monroe in their website, because they thought, well, people will be searching for Marilyn Monroe and she's like associated with diamonds, and they'll come to my website and they'll be interested in diamonds. Only it doesn't work that way. So that's an example of keyword stuffing that people just kept doing. And it actually hurt them in the search engines, because if somebody's looking for Marilyn Monroe, that there is no logical conclusion it's because they want to buy a diamond tennis bracelet for their girlfriend. Like, none. Unless they're searching for diamonds are a girl's best friend. And then what are they looking for? They want the YouTube video. They don't want to see your jewelry store. So relevance is all about giving people information they need about your business. So this pyramid is the second most important thing or this level is the second most important thing in your SEO pyramid. And that makes sense because relevance relates to your purpose and your strategy. There are two concepts you need to know about. The first, it's not on the slide, but I want you to remember it. You don't need all the customers. You just need the right customers. Nobody needs all the customers. We just need the right ones. And the right customers for one nanny agency could be very different from the right customers for another nanny agency. And that's okay. That's actually very desirable. It's what makes room for all of us to have businesses. The second thing you need to know are the answers to your three strategic questions. And they are, who are we? What do we do that makes us different? And why do we matter? I know that when my children were young, I'm actually waiting for my first great grandchild right now. So that was a while ago. But when my children were young, I had nannies because I worked full time. And for me, a live-in nanny was essential. I just felt like that was the only way that we were going to be able to function as a family. For some people, the live-in nanny is the perfect result. For other people, that's just not even something they can contemplate or would want to contemplate, whether or not they have the space. So when you're thinking through who are we, what do we do that makes us different, and why do we matter, you need to really position your specialty. And it may not be live in, not live in. It may be that you have, I don't know, say you have a particular, maybe your agency has a particular focus on children's nutrition, and you are really, really into that. Then weave that nutritional theme through everything you put in your website. Because for parents who are worried that some nanny might sneak something with hydrogenated oils or high fructose corn syrup into their child, I mean, that information will pop for them and it differentiates you. So when you're creating content for your website, you need to tell the stories that speak to who you are as a business. Don't worry about the people you don't matter to. Worry about the people you do, because there's more than enough of them. If you're trying to speak to everybody, you end up speaking to nobody. So instead, tell the story of your strategy and what makes you special, and why you matter, and let the people for whom that resonates be like, ah, that link, I need to click on that link. That is what relevance is all about. So look at the content in your website and make sure it's answering those 3 questions in everything you talk about. Now, as I said a moment ago, the internet may seem like it's all about pictures and video, but it's really about words. Everything is words. So being searchable is about having the words tucked into your website that are going to feed the search results. So when somebody searches for, I don't know, well, let's do the example I just did, live-in nannies with specialty in nutrition. You have to have words in your website that are going to pop out for the search engine and say, oh, wow, I've got a website here with a live-in nanny and a nutrition specialty. That's really specific, right? But that's what you want. You want to be super specific so you get to the right people. A lot of people cut corners when it comes time to picking the words for their website. I think it's because they think they know what they want to rank for. I want to rank for these things. And they assume that that's what their customers are searching for. But many times what you want to rank for and what your prospects are searching for are wildly different things. It's like making the mistake. A lot of retailers with little boutiques, they merchandise the things they like to wear. And that's the mistake of thinking that I am my customer. I may know my customer really well, but not necessarily be my customer. So the same thing happens in search terms, is that people cut corners because they think they know what the right search terms should be. You need to get out of your own head and your own perspective and perceptions and get into your customer's head and their perceptions. What words is your customer using? What is she experiencing when she makes the search? I loved this picture when I saw it. I kind of relate to it. This poor woman can't even type her search in her search engine. She has to speak it to Alexa across the room because she can't get to her keyboard. So how do we ask questions when we're verbalizing them versus typing them? When we type, we tend to be very specific and spare. When we search verbally, she might be yelling across the room, Alexa, tell me how I can find a freaky nanny. She's not going to type that, but she might say that. So the way we verbally search and type search are 2 different things. So you need to really think about who your customer is and what she wants and what she's going through and what emotions she's having. And then you can start thinking about what search terms to put in your website. You can also use tools to do this, but I want you to start with the thinking, really empathizing with your customer. Come up with a list of possible search terms. Also, always ask customers how they found you. And sometimes you can even say to a customer, what did you search for? And they'll remember. So, but there are tools. So, but start by thinking it through. So ask questions like, what are my people searching for? Not everyone who ever wanted a nanny service, but my people, the people that I'm most relevant to. How many people are searching for this term? In what format do they want the information? What are they looking for? Do they need to be able to book a meeting and talk to me right away? Because then your book now link in your search terms is pretty helpful. Or do they just want an article to read, is it more informative and they're doing exploration? So ask questions like these, what are they searching for and how many are searching for it and how does she feel? And then you can use online tools for doing research. And these tools will show you what search terms are bringing people to your website. The tools can even show you what search terms are bringing people to your competitors' websites. Or you might be curious, okay, I know that I'm just, I'm a nanny service, but I'm curious about what people are searching for when they look for preschools. I'm curious about what people are searching for when they look for child development experts, because you can gain insight from parallel or lateral type businesses as well. So these tools will allow you to do that. Some of the tools are Authoritas, SERPstat, Moz. These are all different types of tools, and you can go into Google and search tools to find keywords, and you'll see lists of them. So once you know the right search terms for your target customer and your service offerings, then there are two things you're going to do. You're going to put some of those search terms in what we call your live content. The live content is the articles, the titles, the things that people can see. So page content, articles, customer reviews, your videos, your podcasts, search terms need to show up in that kind of content. But you're also going to put search terms in your meta content. And your meta content is that little box for your keywords or key phrases, or the box for your short description, your long description, alt text for your photos, transcripts for your video and audio. So you've got two layers of content. You've got the content that people can see and read, and then you've got the content that the search engines also search. The search engines search the live content, but they also search the meta content. So you've got multiple opportunities to get your search terms out there in a way that will put you into more search results. Now, when you're selecting search terms, people have a tendency to get all fixated on, oh, this is one of the top 100 search terms for this, category or my type of business. Those are pretty expensive to go after. Even if you're not paying for search, they're expensive to go after because everybody's competing for them. So if you use a tool like Authoritas and it shows you a whole list of search terms that you could use to get at a particular customer, I would start with more like the top 500 and even what we call the long tail, that top 10,000. If you have if you want to do some content on a very, very narrow topic, like 25 low sugar snacks children will gobble up, that's not necessarily going to be in your top 100. And it's not certainly going to be the thing that most agencies are searching for, maybe a nutritionist or maybe a mom blog, but it's something that a lot of moms would be interested in. Will it be a qualified mom who needs a nanny service? Maybe, maybe not. But that kind of long trail, or like the top 10,000 words, really specific content, can get you in front of somebody that might not have even realized she was looking for a nanny service until she read this incredible article. So when you're searching search terms or selecting search terms, particularly as a small business owner, don't go crazy trying to pick the most popular ones, pick the most relevant ones, because you remember you've answered the question, who are we? What do we do that makes us different? And why do we matter? And you have your stories that you're telling, and you can tell some pretty refined stories that differentiate you from everybody else. So now let's talk about what it means to be fast and easy. So we're up at level 4. Remember how Google wants to be everybody's favorite search engine? Well, this level of 4, remember I kind of said, well, you need 1 through 4 to like rank at all. And then you need 4 through 7 to improve your performance. 4 is in the middle because it's kind of where the first 3 levels come together and combine with the performance of your website, the technical performance of your website, to determine whether or not the user experience is a good one. So if you haven't done 1 through 3 well, number 4 can't even happen. And then number 4 is sort of the springboard for 5, 6, and 7. A lot of what happens at this level is technical. So if you have a website developer, your website developer really should be paying attention to the technical performance of your website. If you don't have a website developer, but you're using something like Squarespace, Shopify, Wix, Weebly, one of those, a builder, most of those environments have experts within them who will help you with your SEO, just to make sure the website's doing everything it should. It's not an ongoing contract. You don't need their help all the time, but they can help you fine tune. At the very end, I'll show you a tool you can run your own website through. A lot of what happens in this level will determine whether or not all the work that you've done to optimize your content even matters. We had a client come to us because they paid a lot of money to an SEO optimization company, and that company really focused on their indexing and their links. But the search engine results didn't improve, and neither did their sales. And it was a product selling company, and they had a Shopify site, and Shopify can get really, really slow if you use all their extensions. The SEO company didn't focus on how the website behaved. Like a page is supposed to load in less than 2 seconds. You're supposed to be able to click very quickly through a website and see the pages refreshing very fast. You should be able to search for something and get search results on the site very quickly. Well, they'd focused on links and indexing, but the website was running so slow, nobody had the patience for it. So if you've done all the things in levels 1, 2, and 3, but your website technology is not optimized for really fast performance, then you're wasting a bunch of money. So 4 is the level that you know your website needs to work really well, and your website developer should be managing it, or you can get some help to manage that part. But most people who aren't web developers won't know how to do this part. So you just need to know it's important, if that makes sense. Okay, so here's a laundry list of things that make your website fast and easy. For instance, you can't have any broken links. If you had an article and you deleted the article and that link still lives out there forever. It's like bad pictures of you in 8th grade. They just don't go away. So on the internet, all those broken links live on. And every time somebody hits a broken link, they go to one of those error pages. It says 404 error. And every time that happens to a link on your domain, Google says, oh, they're not paying attention. Oh, they're not paying attention. Oh, they're not maintaining this website. And you go down, down, down in the rankings. So broken links are a problem. If your images don't have alt text, then it won't be fast and easy. If your site is not accessible for the differently abled, it won't be easy. Here's a couple of things that go back to, like, again, that 7th grade English teacher, your writing skills. Your text should be really easy to read. Don't pick a little cursive font. Don't pick a tiny little font that's, delicate and pale gray that nobody my age can read. Make sure your text is easy to read. Use headings. Like if you have a long article, make sure it's broken up with headings. Those are called H1, H2, H3. A big heading, H1 is the big heading, H2 is the subheading, H3 is a subheading. The search engines are looking for those tags, but when you pick heading types, when you're in your article editor in your website, if you just make the copy big and bold using the tool that allows you to say, use a bigger font, make it 22 points instead of 12, or make it bold. That doesn't tell the search engines that's a heading. You actually have to pick the thing that says header. And it exists in everybody's little editor. Making it big and bold, it just looks like regular old text to the search engine, saying, this is my main heading for this page. Here's a subheading and a subheading. That tells Google, oh, wow, they've really organized this information. It's well written. So use of headings. Do good use of paragraph breaks and bullets. Nobody wants to look at a page that is one long paragraph of text. It's overwhelming just to consider it. And Google can tell you have no paragraph breaks. Use bullets if you're explaining a list of things. Break it down into bullets to make it easy to consume and skim. Use pictures to support it. Be really careful using bold text, italics, and all caps. Use them only for emphasis and only sparingly. So this is this whole list of what it means to be fast and easy, and it's about both how your website performs and how people consume your website. Shareability is about authority, or shareworthiness is about authority. So assuming that you've created content that people are looking for and you've answered their questions and your website is so finely tuned and fast that Google loves it, are you guaranteed to rank? Well, not really. To truly outrank your competitors and other people competing for your search terms, you have to be recognized as an authority. So you know how you go to Amazon and you look at reviews for products that you're considering buying? Well, search engines look at how many other websites link to your site. That's a form of recommendation or testimonial or popularity. Google cares so much about this that they use an acronym called EAT, Expert, Authoritative, Trustworthy. And your EAT score determines how well you rank. So sites that don't display the characteristics of being referred to by other sites don't get a good EAT score. So you have to create a site that's considered expert and authoritative and trustworthy if you want Google to recommend you. So how do you get links? Well, first of all, you can create them. You can create internal links between your own content. So something on your homepage can link to your about page. Something on your about page can link to a blog post. Things on your blog posts can link to other pages in your site. Google treats those as authoritative links because they see that you're trying to give people more relevant information as long as the links are relevant. You can earn them. If you write great content, some people will just pick up your content and link to it. You can ask for them. You can go to somebody and say, hey, can I do a guest article on your blog? Or can I write a guest article for this trade magazine? And will you please, I don't need to get paid. Editors are desperate for writers right now. If you can write, this is a great skill. I don't need to get paid, just give a link to my website and give me credit for the article. And then you're linking in an authoritative place, a magazine or a newsletter to your website. You can also trade people for them. So if there's a complementary business that you'd like some of their customers and they would like some of your customers, and people need both of your services, trade links on each other's websites. But these are ways to build authority. So ways to get links are to write great content and do guest writing and collaborate with other business owners of related businesses. So level 6 is readability. So when I say readability, I mean two things. One, can you actually read it, or does it look like a crazy long string of numbers and letters and characters? But also, is it interesting and specific and engaging? Specifically the title, the content, and the URL for every article and every page has to be interesting, specific, and engaging. And that's what readability is about. So take a look at these two search results. So at the top one, we've got a very well-contained title, Get a Copywriter, Copywriting Services. The content is engaging and it actually ends. Like there's no dribbling off with the 3 dots. It's a very clear statement and a question at the end. Will you be next? So it invites the reader in. Whereas the second one, it's a longer title, so it takes longer to read it because you have to actually skim. And then there's this ... So you didn't get the whole description of what that article is about. The first one just holds together so much better because they were following specific rules. Here are the rules. They're easy. All your titles and all your URLs should be 50 to 60 characters max. And your descriptions, that description that you post in your SEO box, the meta box, should be between 120 and 155 characters. And it should be specific and compelling and include just your primary keyword or key phrase. Don't stuff this with keywords. Make it be an inviting little short paragraph that makes somebody want to click the link. You're writing for your reader in your descriptions. Make sure the reader wants to read this. And the 7th level is pretty. So are you giving data that's easy to read and brings the eye right away to important details and provides an answer? So in these two examples, I showed them to you earlier, but I mentioned earlier that the care.com ad had those 4 little boxes beneath it. So not only did you see the care.com search result, you also saw 4 specific things you could click on if you wanted to go to something more specific than just the general article. That's called structured data. Now at the bottom, we have another piece of structured data. It's called a featured snippet. Now, this is not a paid ad. The ones on the top were paid. This one at the bottom of this page is something that Google pulled from somebody's web page, picture and all, because the web page had satisfied all of Google's requirements for site requirements and content quality. And then it had a simple paragraph that was perfect for the SERP page that Google wanted to display. So, and this was also in that search how to find a nanny. And then if you clicked on the answer, you would go to the original web page. So Google made that really pretty little search result because somebody had structured their data well enough for Google to pull it. Now, do you see these ones at the top here? How much does a nanny cost? How much do nannies charge per hour? If you clicked on those little carrots or those little down arrows on the right, it expands to show you a whole open box. And I looked at each of these results. They were each coming from a different website. So they're not all from the same website, but you can expand that, look at the result. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, you can click on it and go to the website. So if Google discovers that you're organizing your data so it can be displayed easily in these ways, you'll get featured in any number of structured data or I'm losing my words for it, featured snippet type displays, which can be really good for bringing more traffic to your site. So that's what structuring data is about. Now, being able to structure your data that way will take some help from your website support person, because it's not just, it's not easy for a layperson to do. It's not expensive at all. You're just probably going to need help for it. And again, it's at the very top of the pyramid. You really should focus on 1, 2, and 3 long before you ever try to worry about making your featured snippets or your pretty schema data. So that's the SEO stack. If you just understand these 7 levels and what's happening at each of these levels, you can interview an SEO company and you can make sure they're talking about all 7 of those things when they start selling to you. You can focus on your content in a more effective way. You can prioritize what you want to work on first, because you may not be able to afford all the SEO things you need to do. Now you know which things have the most value first. So understanding the pyramid helps you do a better job of managing SEO. And now here's a tool you can go to test your own site. So you can go to the URL on the bottom right. It's pagespeed.web.dev, and put in your website's URL, and it will give you a result. Now, this particular website scored terribly. So on mobile, they only scored a 21 out of 100, and your goal is to be above 70. On desktop, they actually scored closer to 50. But still, it's a bad result. And then not only do you get the results, you don't just get this horrifying score or a great score, hopefully, and then not know what to do with it. They actually give you, you'll see on this little GIF, you can expand each of these things and it will say what needs to be fixed. And that's stuff that you hand to your website developer and say, hey, this stuff needs to be looked at because my website's not performing well enough. So that's a tool you can go to look at your own website. So that was a lot of information in a short period of time. Like I said, I was just trying to give you a framework so you could at least think about SEO in a holistic way. You can always drill in and learn more of all of this later. If you have questions, you can reach out to me at that email address. You can learn more about us at works.world, which is our brand site. But I'm going to stop my screen share right now and answer questions, because I see that I have a couple of them.
Yes. So we have quite a few. So one of the questions was when you spoke on the website, is 3 years. You spoke if you built your website, 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, it's most likely out of date. What about 3 years? Do you feel like a website that was built 3 years ago would most likely be up to date and accessible?
It depends. I mean, we built websites back in 2004 that are still up to date because we kept updating them all along as the technology evolved.
Okay.
So if you did a WordPress site 3 years ago and you've been updating since then, yeah, you're fine. But if you built it in a weird little builder, maybe not so much.
What about Squarespace? When you mentioned sites that typically are accessible, would you say that Squarespace falls under that demographic?
Yep, Squarespace does a good job of that.
Wonderful.
All of the builders are trying to stay relevant and keep their code up to date.
Wonderful. We have another question from Marilyn, who said that she's been approached by vendors asking her to advertise on Alexa and other AI devices. Is this something that you would recommend that they do?
Yeah, it can be good. I mean, it's a longer answer than a yes or no. So by promoting to, we call them spoken search sites. So Alexa is about spoken search. So preparing spoken search campaigns is a lot like preparing an AdWords campaign for reading search. It's just a different vehicle. If your website is up to speed, you've done all the things in levels 1, 2, and 3, and 4. You have to get through 4. Then if you pay for ads and you bring people to your site and you're doing a good job of capturing email addresses so you can promote to them later, that's another important piece of it, then that might be a good expense. But if you haven't optimized your website and done the right things in levels 1 through 4, then you might be just wasting money. So it can be a very good thing. It's not a bad suggestion. It's just context matters in the answer.
Great answer. Elise asked if updating your available jobs daily affects the recent and frequent output.
Yeah, it can help. You don't want to just lean on that. Find some other content areas of your site to tweak. But if you're updating daily on the daily jobs, and then you're updating weekly on a blog post, or bi-weekly on some other piece of your website, now you've got a nice little blend.
Great. Jamie asked, if we are not blogging, what is the next best thing to do to meet that frequency and recency quota?
That's a tough one. If you're selling product, that people are regularly introducing new products. But when it comes to services, blogging is really your best bet. Now, it doesn't have to be a blog. Could it be, there's so many things, especially with kids, there's just so many things you can do. So could you share a funny child quote every day, like the funny things kids say, or, find something that you can post a little bit of all the time. Is it a blog? I mean, you call it something different, but it's adding fresh content to the site.
All right, awesome. How often would you recommend that someone update their website?
Weekly. Your minimum.
In the blogs, so Jamie also asked if the jobs on their website is listed in the blog section of the website. So in that website builder, in that particular section, would that count as blogs for SEO purposes or not?
Yeah, it does. It's any new content. SEO doesn't care if it's a blog, a job posting, a product. They don't care. They just want something new and fresh that's properly structured.
Wonderful. Kelly said, is there an advantage or disadvantage to doing blog posts with, I don't even know what this word is.
URL.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a tough one. So some people, so canonical URL is basically the internet saying, oh, Kelly wrote this article on Forbes, and now you're running the article on your blog site or on your website. It's relevant to your website. I can see why you want to share that article, but you didn't write it. It existed first on Forbes. That's your canonical URL, the first place the content was posted. Some people think you get penalized for running non-original content on your site. You don't. The search engines don't penalize you for it, but it's only the right thing to do to credit where you got the article in the first place.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that if somebody's searching, Google's not going to show your link above the first link that had it. You're going to show up later. So it can be helpful in that, like, there are sometimes I will just run somebody else's article on my blog, and I write a lot of original content. But something's brilliant and I want to share it. And since I'm posting every week and there's lots of original content, there's no harm done sharing somebody else's article as one of my posts. I'm staying in that cadence of posting frequently. I just won't get the first search result for the post. If all you're doing is showing somebody else's original content over and over and over on your site, then you're not doing yourself any favors.
Great answer. Ashley asked if you recommend submitting the sitemap to Google to better improve indexing and crawling of the website.
Absolutely. Submit your sitemaps. If you're changing content a lot, you can submit every month. If you haven't submitted in a while and you've got a bunch of new content on your website, submit it then. Otherwise, most people submit about quarterly.
Someone asked, what is a bounce rate and how can they minimize it?
Okay, a bounce rate is when somebody comes to your website, lands on a page and like, not what I wanted, I'm out of here. That's a bounce. The search engines hate bounces because they know that the link they told the person to click didn't work for them. So as far as Google's concerned, they just failed their customer by recommending you. And they don't want to fail their customer. It's your fault they failed your customer. Ding, they don't like you. So a bounce rate is how often people go to a page and then leave it very quickly. It's a couple of, it's less than a second. And how you improve your bounce rate is by having relevant content that's unique, that's interesting, and make sure that the search terms that you attach to that article are going to be, like, if somebody clicks that search term and they land on your article, they're going to be happy.
Gotcha. Can you take your SEO with you if you change platforms?
If you keep, okay, yes and no. You can keep your domain authority. So your domain authority is how long that domain has been in active use. So if you are, thebestnannyagency.com, and you've had thebestnannyagency.com for 15 years, you've got a lot of domain authority in that domain. As long as that domain keeps being active, you retain your domain authority. But you also need page authority. And when you change platforms, usually all your page URLs change and you lose a lot of page authority. So you have to be very careful. So now you're going to weigh the pros and cons. If you're on a platform that's just not serving your needs, it may be worth sacrificing some SEO to get in the right platform and start building it up again. But just be aware you do lose page authority when you switch.
That's great information. Last question. What types, if someone is going to purchase ads, what types of ads would you suggest that they purchase?
Oh, that's such a broad question. I don't answer it effectively because remember when I told you, you have to know who you are. What do you do that makes you special and why do you matter? That's at the heart of all marketing. And so a billboard might be the right answer for one person, but a terrible answer for another person with a seemingly similar company. So it's really hard for me to answer that without knowing more about your business.
I love that. I appreciate your honesty and your transparency. Listen, Andrea has been all the things today. I don't know about you guys, but I'm over here with a nice virtual round of applause because this has been a masterclass on SEO. So informative, so well thought out. Andrea, if attendees would like to contact you or to consult with you or to hire you, is that an option? And if so, can they reach you on the information provided when we send it out?
Absolutely. So the email I gave you is fine. Works.world. Here, I'll put this in the chat.
Thank you.
So that tells you about all the different things we do. And if you want a complimentary, like 15-minute check-in, see if we can do something for you, I'll give you that link too.
Wonderful. This has been amazing. Once again, Apna is committed to making sure you get the best information and that you are informed agency owners. To that end, our next webinar will be on March 24th with Bradley Hook. We'll be speaking on leading through disruption strategies to get ahead of the curve. We have a lot of things going on in our world right now that could be affecting us in business. And we really want to be able to magnetize those strategies to us. I hope that you have been informed and inspired on today's webinar. Feel free to send us your feedback. We will be sending out the webinar recording in the next 5 days for all individuals who registered. And if Andrea does provide for us her slide deck, we'd be more than happy to share that with you all. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all have a great day.
All right, thank you.